Now, our third speaker has close to 3 decades of experience in the GIS sector. He joined ESRI, the Environmental Systems Research Institute, 5 years ago as Business Development Manager with a particular remit to strengthen relationships with the European Commission. Please welcome Guenther Pichler.
Thank you very much, Keith. Dear colleagues, I have no slides. Just lean back, relax. I want to share with you one of my passions. I love jazz, and one of my favorite jazz pianists is Thelonious Monk. And he composed some great pieces of music, like Evidence, Around Midnight. You may know him. But don't worry, I'm not talking about jazz today. I'm referring to him because he once made a memorable statement. He said, "Simple ain't easy." Now think about this for a moment. Simple ain't easy. We are just in the closing plenary of another great Inspire conference. I ran across Roger Longhorn just before, and he provided me with the exact figures. 178 papers, 23 workshops, plus the plenary sessions, plus the thematic working group sessions, plus the internal IOC meetings. That's impressive. But you know what? I wouldn't be very surprised if some of you return home today being even more confused than at the beginning of the week. And you know why? Inspire is complex. And it's getting more and more complex every day. Simple ain't easy. And I have learned a lot during this week. I have also identified a couple of new challenges. But frankly speaking, I think if I ask for a show of hands, I'm not doing this, many in this room would share my opinion that the current Inspire timeline until 2019 is quite ambitious. So anyway, I'm always asked, Guenther, what's your recommendation on an Inspire implementation strategy? Then I say, well, you know, don't just think about fulfilling your legal obligations. Go beyond Inspire in terms of use Inspire as a means to an end to set up your spatial data infrastructure. Vanessa just called it a little bit earlier. She said, from compliance mentality to encouraging use. It's another way to phrase it, but precisely the same message. So how do you do that? First of all, I think, and that's the most important part, bring your key stakeholders together. What you need to do is to find some common ground. Everybody needs to have the same level of expectation, what the scope and what the objectives of the SDI is. Once this is done, just go ahead and look at some core business processes that you have. Look at those business processes as they are currently, and let's say in an ideal Inspire setting. Full data harmonization, full information exchange and sharing, and so forth. Then look at some qualitative, quantitative indicators. Look at your costs, the external, the internal costs, respectively the savings. And then look at the findings. If you can see a clear benefit, and if you can clearly demonstrate to your superiors the value proposition, and if you cannot do that, then you have a fundamental problem. And no technology in the world will help you to solve this. However, if you can show the value, then just go out there, look at the technology options, look at the functionalities, and look at the costs. But please listen carefully, not just at the costs for procurement and implementation. Look at the total cost of ownership over the next 10 years or so. That's important. Let's revisit a little bit when Inspire started in terms of technical baseline. I remember the work on the early position papers, especially on the architecture and standards position paper. I looked it up because I didn't really know it anymore. It was published in July 2002, 9 years ago. Now, 9 years is not just a long time, It's an eternity in IT. And when you think what happened ever since, the old baseline, so to speak, is of course still valid. There was the suggestion to use open standards as much as possible, ISO TC211, OGC, and so forth. But we had not the faintest idea what will happen during this time in the last 9 years. And I'm not even referring to things like linked open data. Nigel will address that a little later. I'm referring to much simpler things, like, for instance, user-driven content or volunteered geographic information. Just think about the OpenStreetMap community. I mean, they will have their 5th annual conference in September, international, to discuss the state of the map. And that's not enough. Next month they will meet in Vienna, Austria for the first European conference. Isn't that phenomenal? And on the other hand, think about how, for instance, social media took off, many of which are location-centric, like Foursquare or Gowalla. Okay, but it's not complex enough. It's not just Inspire sitting out there. We just heard from Jiří that we have also to take GEOS, GMES, SAIS, SAIS, and so forth into account. There have been projects like, for instance, the GIGAS project, which did, I think, a very great job to look at a common approach by giving some recommendations on the way forward. But GIGAS also discussed and identified some open issues. And these issues are now being addressed, for instance, in CEN TC287. It's very complex. Inspire, I think, can be an important building block in this concert. But it's all interlinked. You cannot look at one initiative by itself. When you look at GMES, for instance, it used to be a voluntary approach. It's now a regulation. There is some funding available, some 107 million, if memory serves me right. There's also, let's say, a plan how to work together with Inspire. There's also a GMES committee in place. Now here I already wonder, are these the same people like in the Inspire committee? Well, and if not, do they talk to each other? If not, well, hopefully someone is going to facilitate the communication. Or take GEOS. GEOS, the 10-year implementation plan is ending 2015, and then funding may get an issue. At least to my knowledge, it's not secured. And then finally, don't forget about SAIS, the Shared Environmental Information System. I mean, I learned this week that a draft version of the SAIS implementation plan is now available. Not publicly yet, but it is available. But still, it's a high-level document. It's a policy document that needs, quote unquote, to be translated into technical guidance to ensure a consistent and coherent execution. And again, I think Inspire can be an important component in this, but no one knows what environmental monitoring will mean in a couple of years. I mean, right now we are talking about near real-time data streams from sensor networks. But what's happening in 5 years? I have no idea. Anyway, let me summarize. All these initiatives are valuable. I mean, I would be preaching to the converted if I would say something different. But on the other hand, we have a complicated economic situation, severe budget cuts in government. And sorry for that, but I can't hear this anymore, these opportunities in a crisis. What I really would like to do is, and that's the only way to prevent that we are working even more and longer for less money, and this is what I would like to conclude with an appeal to reason. Keep it as simple as possible, although we know simple ain't easy. Thank you very much.